Hey everyone. Okay, cool. Hey everybody, thanks for coming. Real quick, I want to give a quick shout out to Plumley & Associates for sponsoring tonight. The pizza should be here about 6:30. There's soda in the fridge and on the counter, so help yourself. But everybody give a quick round of applause for the sponsor. And before we get started, we're going to ask Christy to come up here and give us a couple quick words.
Thank you, William, and thanks for having us. We are a search firm in Nashville, and we do recruiting plus. We also do leadership development and career development. We're just very relationship-based. We've been around for a couple of years. Martin Plumley is our owner. Some of you might have heard of his name. He's so well connected in town. And I'm an executive recruiter with the firm. I've been there for a couple of months. Development, IT, web development, sales, HR, engineering, those are some of the major areas that we focus on. And like I said, we're relationship-based, so we're really just interested in finding new ways to get out into the community, shake your hand, meet you, learn about your interests, your experiences, your goals. One of our main areas of focus is connecting with talented folks who are interested in just growing themselves and learning about their opportunities and how to connect to opportunities. So it could be that we have a position on the table that interests you at the time. Maybe we don't. We still want to have that conversation with you. So I just invite you to take down any of the information that you see, reach out, Twitter, or if you're a LinkedIn person too, email. We do have some development jobs on the table right now, but really we just want to get to know what you're all about. And I also appreciate being here tonight because I want to continue to absorb and learn all there is to learn about what you all do and all the talent that you have. So thanks so much. I hope you enjoy the pizza, and thanks for connecting me with this group.
Yeah. Thank you for coming. So, quick show of hands. Who here is going to November this weekend? All right, that's a good turnout. Cool. You guys excited? All right, sweet. It's going to be a good time. So, you might notice that Kevin's going to be giving this talk this weekend as well. But so we're going to do a quick dry run of this. So everybody be excited about it. I don't think I have any other announcements for this week, but I'll see you this weekend. So Kevin, take it away.
Thank you, William. So as you said, this is, if you were planning on going to November, you are hereby excused from my talk. Unless I really bomb this talk, then you won't come see if I did a better job on Saturday or not. And didn't learn anything, and gosh, there must be something cool about Meteor that could have been said. But anyway, yes, I'm doing this in November as well. So that's the first sort of housekeeping item. The second is pizza's showing up at 6:30, and I would personally be insulted if you did not stand up and go get some pizza when it arrives. So please, as a matter of fact, I might probably just take an intermission and lift, because we should. Pizza that could be warmer than it is much worse than pizza that is peak warmness. So we'll stop and go line up and get pizza. This should work fine for that. So Meteor.js. Before we jump in, just a little, here's basically what we're going to do tonight. A few introductions to some people and some software and some ideas. Then sort of a conceptual overview of what Meteor does and how it does what it does. And then I've got a demo, and my demo is sort of this. I don't know if anybody in here goes. I see a few faces from PyNash, but a few months ago, Brian Daly did a PyNash presentation. He did an introduction to Django, and had no slides and had no code prepared, and did it by hand. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to do Meteor, and I'm not gonna try that. and he nailed it. If you guys shout out to Brian Daly, he absolutely killed it. But you can ask anybody like my boss at pair programs with me. I'm an awful typist, so I'll be doing Git checkouts during this. We'll be looking at a live app that you can monkey around with. Okay, so there's that. First off, who's this guy? Like William said, my name is Kevin Harvey. I'm a senior systems engineer at Smile Care Club. I've been hacking on the web since 2004 with different technologies. Obviously, if you're on the web, you're probably doing some type of JavaScript. So I've been using JavaScript that whole time. But I would say that I've been doing real, like, heavy-duty JavaScript development, the kind of like front-end framework kind of stuff that we all know and love, for the last 2 or 3 years. So, yeah, pretty minimal. So, want to know, that's who I am. Want to know a little bit about who you guys are. Just a quick show of hands. Who would, among you, like front end versus back end, who would like raise your hand if you're like definitely a front end person, like that's what you were. Okay, and then so back end, and maybe a little bit of both. It's okay. So yeah, it's like big Venn diagram. Yeah, huge cover area. Cool. Like most of us. Who out here has used Meteor before, like even like done the demo or something, just to play with a little bit? And then has anybody got a Meteor site in production or close to production, you'd say? Close, very close, cool. That close counts. Great, so hopefully this will be informative to most of you then. Yeah. So last introduction is what is Meteor? So instead of jumping right into the demo, which is what I would, if I were you, I would be most interested in seeing, I think it makes sense to talk about some of the what it is and how it's different from other frameworks, because it is really, really different. It makes fundamentally different assumptions about the way to build a web application than most other web frameworks do. So I come from a Django, like my backend work, even my day-to-day backend work is in Django. So I'm a Python guy, server-side stuff. You may have done work in Ruby on Rails, or even if you're in JavaScript, you're doing Express or something like that, and all of those frameworks are conceptually very different from Meteor. So the first thing to tell you about Meteor is that it is a full-stack web framework. It is pure JavaScript, so JavaScript in the front end code and in the back end code, and you work with the same API in the front end and the back end, which is really very interesting to kind of set up in such a way that you write code that is shared both in the server and the client in the browser, and we'll show you. I've got some examples of that in the demo. So what is it like? If you just typed into Google right now Meteor versus, the first thing that would come up is Meteor versus Angular, and that's not really fair, because I mean it is totally fair, because Angular is a huge, awesome front end tool, and Meteor has all that, but it's got this back end component as well. So it's kind of that's what is most often compared to. But the biggest difference is that Meteor is also a server side technology where Angular is not. So how is it different? The biggest difference and the key takeaway from how Meteor is different is to talk about the notion of requests versus subscription to data or assets on the server. So traditionally, web applications, as I'm sure most of you know, your browser or your whatever thing that is getting something, accessing your web application, is doing a request, and then the server sends a response back, and so you get this request-response thing. Whereas Meteor is subscribing to changes on things that are on the server. And we'll get in a little bit more about how that works, but it uses WebSockets, which is a really cool sort of mind-bending technology, at least I've thought it was mind-bending for the last couple of years. That's the big difference, is that it says it opens up a socket to a server, and if changes and say, I want to know about this, this blog post, and if this blog post changes, send me information about what has changed. So that's pretty wild. It's really good at single-page apps. It's designed to do single-page apps. That's another reason why it's most often compared to Angular. There's a routing package you can install that does true routing, not just on the browser side, but it actually does routing on the server side as well. But I won't go into the routing package side. If you're installing Meteor and you're ready to rock on that package is called Iron Router. One important concept as you're developing with Meteor is it's database everywhere. So you're running MongoDB on the server, but you're also running this thing they call mini Mongo inside the browser. So it's actually a miniature database implemented entirely in your JavaScript and in your browser's memory that you access in the same way you access Mongo on the server. And Meteor just kind of keeps all that in sync. If your database is small enough and you don't have it tamps down at all, you would literally have all of the entirety of the database sitting in your browser at any given time. Now that would, depending on how much data you have and how much stuff you're working with, that can really kill your performance. But that's the way it works. So you do things which we'll show you to limit the stuff you're keeping in the database, but you're accessing the database in your browser first, and that database is checking for changes from the server. With that in mind, reactivity is a big part of Meteor. So this is where we really get into what starts to seem magical about Meteor. And I say magical when you hear me say magical, hopefully it sounds like I'm skeptical, because again, anytime it seems like something is happening and you don't understand why it's happening, that's a bad thing. So I'm going to try to cover a little bit of the magic tonight. But so if I have access to something from a database and I have the rights to change it, and I do change it, like I update the address to a party in my browser. My browser is going to let me do that immediately, and it's going to make the change in the UI, and it's going to make the change in my local database. And then that change is going to get sent to the server, and if there's any server-side validation that happens, it's going to check to make sure that's cool, and then if there's a problem, it's going to send it back to my client and then re-update my UI, which is really crazy. So I don't think that I think my application is too fast to actually show you any of this. So I'm going to try to show it to you. But like if you try to do something you're not allowed to do from the server's perspective, it's going to let you do it in the client. It's going to make that change in the client, and then going to go, hey, was that okay? Oh, it wasn't okay, and then the client's going to the client will re-update. So the reason it does that is it wants to be as fast as possible. The thing that really will blow your mind about Meteor when you install it, when you start playing with it, is how fast changes happen between two browser sessions. Reactivity's cousin is latency compensation, so continuing the magicness. Anything that happens on the server are updated automatically. So if I change a record on the server, it's that via that WebSocket, it is sending that change back down. And all my models are simulated locally. So again, on the client side, I've got access to all of the validation of the model, or validation. So it's MongoDB. It's a strong word, but all methods and things like that. It knows about what the model can do and can't do in the browser, so it all happens very, very fast. Meteor is not only a framework, but it's also its own package manager. So you install Meteor, and then you've got Meteor on your console, or a Meteor command in your terminal, and you do Meteor create my app, whatever, and then you can add packages with that Meteor command as well, and then you run Meteor locally by this Meteor command. And one of the key things that they've really strived, I think the Meteor development team has strived to make a part of working with the Meteor, is that development happens really, really fast. And hopefully I'll be able to show you that tonight by showing the few tiny lines of code I write to make an app that kind of does something pretty cool. For no other reason, you might try Meteor if you ever need to prototype something, and I'll show you how far if we go from 0 to prototype tonight. If you just want to something with a database up on a server somewhere that a couple of people can access, just to show that it works, Meteor might be a good choice. So I had some points that I forgot to make here, but there is very little boilerplate. I'll show you that in the demo. You get a lot of stuff for free when you add packages, and there's very, very little context switching, obviously, because not only you're writing in the same language on the server and the client, but you're using the same API on the server and the same stuff. So with that, I'm going to start a demo. The first URL you see here, questionnator.meteor.com, is a live, the finished product live. You can log. It'll ask you to, if you want to do stuff, you can log in with your Twitter account and monkey around. And then the source code is available at my GitHub, which is KC Harvey is my username, and the-questionnator is the name of the app. So have a look if you like. The source code is probably the most interesting bit, and you can see, I think the main takeaway from the source code is how little of it there is to do what that app does. Okay, so the first thing that I'm not going to do because I already did this is how you install Meteor. They've got a shell script sitting at installmeteor.com that you pipe to your sh there, and that will install Meteor. And you can immediately start running the server or start creating apps. So here's one of those times where I'm going to switch over to the terminal as soon as I find my. There we go. So you go here and refresh. Cool. All right. So the first, I'm going to Meteor create the questionnator. It's going to give me a directory. I'm going to cd into that directory, and I'm going to run Meteor by just typing in. And that starts MongoDB on port 3001, and the Meteor server on port 3000. And this is what I get. So this is a iframe that's actually showing what's running on localhost 3000 on my computer. It's active, so I can go in here and do some stuff, and it counts the number of times I clicked. It's just playing around with the session variable. So once I did that installation, I get three files in a hidden directory. The first thing you get is a .meteor that has a few like package management kind of scripts or config files and things like that. Mainly managed by Meteor, so you don't futz with that very much. But you get a CSS file, an HTML file, and a JS file. The CSS file is, you could obviously tell, there's no CSS really going on much right now. But let's take a look at the HTML that it gave us. So, like I said, no boilerplate. There's no doc type, but there is a doc type in the browser. It sticks some meta stuff in there too. And then I get a body and an H1 tag and a little template. We'll talk a little bit more about Meteor's template language as we move on. And here's my JavaScript file. So this JavaScript file, I think the first thing to notice here is that there are two if statements, one Meteor.is client and Meteor.is server. So as this JavaScript file is anything that's like JavaScript. If you don't specify that I want this to run on the server or on the client, it runs on both, and we'll look at some code like that. But this code specifies that it only wants this session stuff going on at the top there to run on the client, and the server. There's actually nothing really meaningful in this server block. Yeah, it's just a comment. So don't worry about all this stuff. We're gonna just trash it and start over. The first thing I want to do is I want to install Bootstrap. So to do so, you run Meteor add, and then I'm adding a community Bootstrap 3. Bootstrap 3 package. So let me do that. And without refreshing the page, come on, Reveal.js, that you're awesome. Oh, that's because I'm in the wrong. Yes, of course. Yes, of course. Check out. Oh. Excuse me. So refresh you. I have to get my presenter notes again. And that's the shot I wanted. Excuse me. Okay. All right. So what I'm doing is doing this guy.
No, on the left.
On the left. Oh. Yeah. Let me see if I can just do a plus right in the browser. This kind of browser stuff. So. Hey, look at that. Super. There you go. All right. Everybody cool over there? You see that? Okay. What I'm doing here, just get checkouts to certain points in my repository there. So check out. Now that installed the Meteor package, the Bootstrap package that I asked for. So hot code refresh. I didn't refresh the page. I didn't do anything special to make that happen. All I did was install the Meteor. As a matter of fact, all I did was change the file in that .meteor directory that said I want the Bootstrap 3 package, and it happened. So Meteor is watching my files for changes and sending changes back down. So that's not just a development trick. That's not like Grunt could do that in regular file, like whatever. That will happen on the server. If you were accessing this on the server and I changed the CSS file on the server, Meteor is going to reach back down into your client and say, hey, there's Bootstrap 3 now. Let's use that. We'll talk a little bit about how it does that kind of towards the end, but the first takeaway is look at that, right? All right, so I've installed Bootstrap, and now I want to make some pretty stuff. So I am going to do the same thing, check out a SHA that has that very standard, Bootstrap, what should almost be considered Bootstrap boilerplate. Navbar stuff. So I'll do that. And there it is. And then I'll do some more pretty stuff. I'm gonna add a form. All right. So let's talk a minute about the form that, or that template deal that's in there. So Meteor comes with a template language that's called spacebars, and it's close to handlebars, but it's very, very stripped down. Is the way that it is. It's really only like just a handful of stuff, a handful of things that you can use inside of a template. I'm going to replace this with what I'm going to call a questions list. So I changed the name of hello to questions list, and this is the Meteor. Oh, where's my SHA? Oh, it's in the next slide. But so this is the standard way of defining a new template in Meteor. The important bits are the double bracket arrow. That's saying, hey, I've got a template. It's called questions list. Put it here, and then down below that, I have defined that template by the template with a name, attribute name, and then that's my template inside there. So you can probably guess what's going on. This is not rocket science. Hashtag each was looping over some variable questions, and then inside that loop, I've obviously got a text and a votes that I can access. So the double brackets thing is going to access data on that question loop. So the name business is going to give us access to that template in my JavaScript file, and we'll take a look at that in a couple slides. So that's the template that I want to change. Those are the updates I wanted to add to the template, and now I'm going to do a little hard-coded data just so that we can see something in the UI with that template that I just wrote. So just declaring a variable that with an array of objects, 3 to be exact, and then passing that object to what is called a variable or a template helper. So questions list was the name of the template that I created. So I access that template with this template dot name of template deal, and I'm going to supply a helper. And helper is just a variable, or you can or context for that template that you can access. And I'm just passing it that array, so that each loop that I put in there is putting us in the UI, and yeah, it doesn't do anything right now because there's nothing really didn't tell it to do anything, but all those questions are there, and it's looping over my template. Yeah. So this is now we're going to do some data stuff. So this is how you create a collection in Mongo. I'm adding this one line of code to questions.js, and I'm not adding it in that is client or is server area. So I want this collection to exist both on my client and my server, and this will actually create that table in the MongoDB called questions. So let's do that. And once I do that, I can access it both in my terminal and in the browser. So in the top code block here, one of the commands you can run with Meteor from command line is Meteor Mongo. That starts that accesses that Mongo version that your website is running on, and you can do things like db.questions.find. You can also access the exact same. You can access any Mongo in your browser's console, and we'll look at doing that in a minute. With using the name of the variable that you created when you access the collection. So. Let's update the helper to use the Mongo collection instead of that variable that I created. So once I update the collection to do that, you'll see that all my questions go away, obviously, because there's nothing in my database yet. That's it. Once it kicks around. So they're declaring a helper to be questions, and the questions context is just a cursor in my Mongo database, asking essentially for all the questions that are in my DB. And the reason you're seeing them here is because this is an existing database. So, I'm going to kill my server, and I'm going to do Meteor reset to delete the server. Start over again. All right, so I just stopped the server, restarted, deleted the database, restarted the server. We should still get a refresh. Yes, so I didn't do anything in my browser, and it figured that out. So all my questions are gone now because I emptied my database. So I'm going to add some code that will preload some data to my server, so kind of a fixture deal here. All I'm doing is asking Mongo if I have any questions, and if I do not have any questions at all, to insert some. So this is standard Mongo, it's very close to standard Mongo functionality. Key values. And so now I've got real stuff in here. That's a real text from my database, and that's all of those questions literally really have 0 votes. Yeah. So now I can start monkeying around with this, which is what we really wanted to do. So I'm gonna keep this up here and get out of full screen for a minute and open up a new browser window. So this is, where is it? This is a browser window that I've had open the whole time, and it's been updating as we go along. So I'm going to go to the console, and I'm going to do questions. Find.fetch. And there they all are, and I can look at them in my console here. I can do questions.find one, and I'll just pop off the first one that it comes to. Questions has a U in it frequently. There we go. So that's a question, and I can get the ID of that deal, _ID. worth mentioning, I can do questions remove, and I can give it any ID I want. Find one dot underscore ID. And there they go. That one. And now I can insert more. I want insert. I'll go ahead and assume that that's going to get about 30 votes. Fair assumption. Oh, what I do? I'm having trouble seeing the. Is that not a bracket at the beginning of that? The prints it. Still right? I'm gonna mix my quotes. What I did? There we go. And so now I've got a question here with 30 votes in it. And it's over here too. We just couldn't see it because my console's in the way. Can y'all tell the difference between double quotes and single quotes in this? It's so zoomed, I can't. Anyway. So yeah, I could. Now I've got, you know, that this on the left side of the screen there, you're getting new information from the database and stuff that's been deleted or been added, and you're getting on the right hand side, you're adding and deleting stuff. So it's, you know, and if any of you were hitting my local server now, you would see that yourselves. And if any of you are playing with that. Questionator.meteor.com, you might have seen, you know, questions coming in, coming out, or votes going up or going down, or something. Probably getting 1,000 votes by now because you can vote as many times as you want because I didn't take the time to put any restrictions in. Okay, so that's monkeying around with data. So, all right, mea culpa time, at least from the Meteor folks. Meteor includes 2 packages, and this is the first of them, auto-publish, that makes prototyping super, super easy. And this package is called auto-publish, and we're about to remove it. Auto-publish says, okay, everything that is in the server database should be in the client database. Now, we talked about that earlier, how bad that would be if you had really any amount of data at all, almost. It's also insecure, depending on what type of data you're working with. But it's all. They figure that, you know, the AP, you have to start to want it to be wide open, so you can start playing with the API immediately, trying things out, and then later on you can remove auto-publish so that you are, you know, and then make up your own rules about who should access what and which clients should get what. So I'm going to remove auto-publish, and then we're going to write a rule. So once I did that, everything should go away. Huh? There. Oh, that's the wrong. Excuse me. I'm sorry. That's the wrong shot. I'll just do it straight up. There we go. Live coding. Haha, Brian Daly. I did it. All right. I'll put this back in full screen. Now, so I'm going to add some code that actually does the publish deal. So in my is server block, I'm going to, this is how you would publish something from Meteor. Very simple. You declare a publish, and you pass an argument for what you want to call that publication to be. In my case, I'm naming it the same thing as my collection. You don't necessarily have to do that, because if I wanted a subset of questions, I might call it, you know, questions from Monty Python or something. I don't know, but anyway. But I'm just returning the cursor from MongoDB of all the questions that I want to publish. In this case, it just happens to be all of them. And then from my client, I'm going to subscribe to all of those to that publication. So now once I do that, oh, stupid. Stash. Changed it. Check out. There we go. All right, so I'm going to subscribe to those questions that are sitting in my database now, and that should all come back in for a second. So what this does in reality is gives you really fine-grained control over what goes down to the client. Typically speaking, you would do something like, you'd save the user's ID. If they're logged in, you'd save their user ID on the object, and you'd only return questions that were their question, or maybe that are flagged public. And this might be the place where you start to do. You could do some pagination here if you wanted to control, if you needed to have that level of control over what was in the client. All right, so that publishing data. Here's a very simple one. Just going to sort those results. You do that. I've done that here in that helper function where I do the find. Again, that helper function is in my client, in the is client block. So it's only running on the client. And that's again very close to standard Mongo syntax. So now the one that had 30 votes is up top. Yeah, that's also good. You did it. Event handling. Okay, now let's do some cool stuff. So these vote up, vote down buttons in my client here. See that? All the commit hashes in the next slide. So event handling is nice and clean in Meteor. Again, if you that template.questions list, I'm accessing that part of the template that I want to, and in this example, I'm registering a click event on the .vote up. That's the button there. And then once I prevent default, I'm going to call a method, which I will show you in the next slide. The method is called upvote, and I'm passing it this _ID. So when you're doing events like this, and you're in a template that has a loop in it, this is going to refer to the thing that you are looping over. So I'm accessing the ID of the question that we are looping over in the questions list. Then I'm going to provide a method. So when I try to upvote, I'm going to find that question in my database. And I'm going to set its votes to one more than the number of votes it had previously. Same thing for downvote. I'm just going to subtract one. So now, finally, at long last, I've got some interactivity. I can do things. And oh, it's going to take forever. I shouldn't have made it 30, but whatever. The sorting is going to work too once I get there. Why not? We got time. We're waiting for pizza. Yeah, there we go. So 29 votes, and then it moves up. Because the sorting happens again in the client, not in the server. It's moving up and down really, really rapidly. So I'm going to change out a little bit in my template here. I'm going to do some. I want to work on this form up here. So as sort of a, this is how I organize my code. If I want to do something in JavaScript to a part of the client, even if that would be enough of a reason for me to pull something out into its own template so that I have a name for it. So I'm going to take out the form that was in there and move it into a question form template. And then I can, in the client side, register an event for the template form. So I, unfortunately, in this long list of commits that I'm doing here, I neglected to prevent default on that submit that I'm about to do. So you're going to see a screen flash, but you're smarter than I am, as it turns out. And if I prevented the default behavior, there would be no screen flash. So I'm registering on the submit event on the form inside the question form template, and I'm just going to insert a new question. So let's see. Submit that, and it shows up magically in the bottom, and it's in the other one. I don't need to show you now, but it did. Well, maybe, yeah, why not? Here it is in my other browser. It'd be in my phone if I was accessing this over the internet. That's the server updated this browser window because MongoDB changed. All right, so this is where you really start to get a lot of stuff for free. As I said, Meteor is a package manager, and there are lots and lots of packages. But one of the early, very very on, the core team provided Facebook, Twitter, Google, a couple other, and then a general straight up password accounts packages. So you just simply install accounts-Twitter and then some sort of package that controls the user interface for that, for those accounts. So there's also an accounts-UI that's provided by Meteor itself, but I'm going to use this guy Ian's accounts UI Bootstrap 3 because I'm doing the Bootstrap 3 stuff. And then you get this template tag right here, this template. You get to drop that in your template. I'm going to do a little bit of extra work to this because it's a nice UI. I'm nervous about my first November presentation. I want it to look good. So, but this is all again the boilerplate, close to boilerplate Bootstrap stuff, and then I drop in my little my tag there in that unordered list. So once I do that, I don't have this shown here. I've opened up the iframe a little bit because we're going to need to see what's going on. All right, let me get to where I need to be in the code. So just by installing those two packages and including the logins button in my template, it's going to give me that configured Twitter button. So through the UI, not in a settings file anywhere, nowhere except in the UI, I've got a configure Twitter button, and it's going to give me the directions I need to configure Twitter authentication. I've already done the setup stuff, so I'm going to drop in my API key and my secret. It's going to save that to my database, and now I can sign in with Twitter. Boom, done. Sign in with Twitter. That just happened. So yeah, I could do stuff like go find my picture and show it, or get my username from Twitter, or whatever I wanted. But I'm logged in with Twitter, and I can log out and log back in again. And that was all it took, which is sweet for like me with twins and not a lot of time to work on side projects. Okay. So now that I got a user ID, I can restrict some access. I can keep people from doing stuff. For instance, if they are not logged in, I can disallow them from adding questions. I'm going to make that change. This is in my server block. I am. You've got this on the collections API. You've got this method called allow, and to that you add insert, update, delete, and those are functions that you can apply any logic you want to within. So all I'm saying here is this user ID, which these allow functions take user ID by default. If there's not a user, if it is none, then that's false. So do not allow this person to insert. Now that I've done that, I can sign out of Twitter, and then I can try to ask. So I got 3 questions, and I'm going to try to ask. And not in there. And I got that page refresh I was telling you about. It's so truly embarrassing. But yeah, it didn't let me. It didn't let me do it, and that's because I'm not logged in. So now I'm going to log in, and well, I'll do it here just to show. And oh, there you go. Because I logged in, I can then do the thing. So. And this is basically the last thing I wanted to show you is the other helper prototype function that's in there. Insecure. So Meteor Insecure is like auto-publish, allows any and all actions on anything in the database to any user. So you can see how that would possibly be a bad thing. I can insert, I can update, I can delete, no matter for whatever reason at all. So I'm going to remove that. Let's see. I think at this point, before I remove insecure, yeah. Let me open up my. Let me sign out, and let me hop into my deal. And I'm going to do that. What am I going to? I'll do remove questions ID again, and I can do it. It'll let me. Oh, excuse me. I got a validator on it, so yeah, never mind. So is because I have supplied a method to do what I just did. I have any. If I didn't have any methods or allow functions or any like validation allow stuff going on, it's totally wide open. And again, you can see how if you want to prototype fast and you want to get something up and available to see quickly, that's like nice. That's nice. Like yeah, just let it all happen, and I'm not going to worry about any security at all. But it's named insecure because it's supposed to be removed. Like that's why it's there. It's sitting in your in your package directory, package configuration manager. It's saying insecure. It's like, well, that should probably be on. You generally remove that before you go to production. So let's see. I think that was the end of the demo. It is okay. So great. And the pizza's here. So I've got like 5 more slides. So do you want to take? I could blow through my 5 slides. Let's take a vote. We're going to vote, and it's for real quick. I could blow through my last 5 slides, and we can do questions over pizza as I'm moving around, or we could grab pizza, come back, and let me do my 5 slides. Let's do the second. So let's take a break. Well, okay. Do you want me to blow through it now, or who wants me to finish in 10 minutes? And who wants to get pizza right now? Pizza. Do it. All right. So in 10 minutes.
Kevin, you can talk at all about how does it scale, or you just, I guess you're just going to put up 40 questions and see what people care about.
I have a little bit on deployment. It's honestly, it's kind of a murky picture at this point. It's not, you know, like if you really want to, you want to nail it, you've got to you're doing yourself. But the good news is it scales really, really, really well if you get your locations correctly.
So that you're not publishing everything to everybody, right?
Exactly. Yeah. So and you know you get that initial payload when you add. You're not getting any new HTML, CSS, or JavaScript unless something changes on the server, and then you only get just the changes. So that's tiny. I've worked in my last company did this project for a manufacturer. It was an ELP. We were keeping track of their production of mosaics built by robots. So ton of inventory. You know, thousands of SKUs of colors of tile. We kept inventory pounds, not individual tiles, but pounds of this tile, what they were building, like how quickly the robot moved through this thing. A lot of data, tons of data. And we definitely noticed in our naivete, it was really the first project that did in Meteor, that once you tried to load, if you tried to load everything, it would kill the browser. But once we figured it out, that if we managed what was inside the browser, it's all about knowing what's running in your browser. That's a piece of cake. But in terms of scalability, you know, you're asking for so little from the server. You're running WebSockets, and then you're not asking. You're only asking for the tiniest amount of data to keep track of this stuff. So it scales pretty nicely.
Yeah, so no problem scaling the Mongo on the other side.
Yeah. So Mongo does the sharding bit, right? And it works. You know, it scales as well with Mongo. There's nothing about Meteor would keep Mongo would still be problematic.
Cool.
It's really is. Yeah.
Yeah, it's pretty impressive. It's I heard it was something I needed to check out. But yeah.
It is absolutely mind blowing. You know, like, it seems like it's funny because, like, you know, as a Django guy, I want to learn a few different technologies and want to know a bunch of different stuff. But I just don't feel compelled to spend the time to learn something like Ruby or Express.js or any of the other kind of server-side things, because this feels like this is where it's going. Like, it's a big shift in the way that the internet works.
Wouldn't it be certainly right? That's where things are going. And this is just the latest instance of doing that.
Yeah, it's really cool. And they just got one thing I forgot to mention. I mentioned when I step back in is it just got to 1.0, so it's becoming a very mature project.